Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio, I have a guest via another guest. Somebody that's definitely one of the largest supporters of Detroit is Different. Shout out to Mr. Keith Bennett. And he said, "It's a young lady in town that's working on something. She needs to get on your podcast." And he was telling me what she was working on. And I'm like, yeah, she does need to get on the podcast. So from that came a phone call almost immediately. And she gives me a call. And I'm like, Mr. Bennett already let it be known. So even though time is scarce because this is so large and for the community, we're going to get this going and definitely talk it up. But got to get the story first. Cheryl Ajamu, how are you today?
I am great. What up, though? I got to say it.
Okay, and that's definitely what you got to do in Detroit. For sure. What up, though, is the greeting that we always gonna give. But before we get into like so much of the greetings and all of that, this starts with your roots to here. So what was the tie? How many generations deep? What brings your family to Detroit? What's your Detroit connection?
So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. And,
oh, man.
Yes, the 901, first 48,
Okay.
But I grew up there, and then I got married around 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And my ex-husband actually is from Memphis, too. He got a job at Ford, just like, historically Black people have done. They get a job, move to the north to get a better opportunity. And then we got married. So I was married for 20 years, and then, that didn't work out. And I really liked Detroit. I had not lived anywhere else. I went to college in Memphis, had traveled, but never lived anywhere else. So when I came here, I didn't know anybody. I think my dad found some relatives that I did not know I had. I didn't know anybody, but it was like I had moved to the big city. Everything was so fast for me, but it was exciting.
So we got to unpack that a little bit more. And that's how we do in Detroit is different. So we're going to get to all of that. We're going to get to all of that. So first off, 96, you come in here. So 96 is an Archer administration. You come and move in during the Archer era. And you leave in Memphis. For a lot of people that act like they just now find in Memphis just because the music is going like that. But Memphis is one of them cities that's also a Black city too.
Yes.
Very Black city. So that's in line. And the other tie is moving on up to work for one of those big threes. But in the 90s, that wasn't happening as much. What was the feel like? What was the culture like? What neighborhood did you all move into when you all came up?
Okay. So when we first got here, we had already heard about Palmer Park, but we couldn't get in. Nobody was selling their homes. Now, this is 96, 97. We looked Sherwood Forest. We looked everywhere, but the areas, and to remember, we didn't know anybody. So we went by what people
We're telling you.
Where we're telling us. And they said Sherwood Forest and Palmer Park. Nobody was selling any house over there. So we've heard about Southfield, and they said, well, that's where people actually moved first when they started moving out of Detroit. So we went there, and, we found a house in Southfield.
Okay. What was the neighborhood like? How did you take to it initially? I know you said that you've been here that long and you love it.
Yeah.
What was the connection that made you say, okay, I'm digging this culture? And then also 90s, that's a different feel culturally.
So I love the neighborhood, but I like the access to Detroit. Now, this time, the riverfront was not, as developed as it is now. But for me coming in, we used to just hang out on the Mississippi River, but it wasn't as developed as, even though, for most Detroiters, it wasn't as developed. It was exciting for me because it was just so nice. You could see Canada. You could go over to Canada. I love the architecture of Detroit. That's the first thing I noticed. The churches, the architecture. I would just drive around on Saturdays and downtown, nothing was happening. It was a ghost town on Saturday. I would drive around and just look at architecture because it was just so amazing to me. And, social media was not even around yet, but I would call my friends and say, Detroit got this, or, we would go to Metro Beach and they would say, Detroit got a beach? And I was like, yeah, it was just the concerts, the outdoor concerts and stuff like that. It was just so much to do. And then the weather was so better in the summer because in Memphis it's like 102, 105. Nobody's going outside.
It's like 95 is much better than 100.
Yes. And then
At 10 degrees.
The Detroit summers, we were getting like tons of people. Like my family would come up every summer just because the weather was so great, and we'd have like a whole tour. So we would do Underground Railroad because the 2nd Street Baptist Church, we would go there. Motown, we went to Elijah McCoy, Tuskegee. I had like an agenda. I turned into a travel agent.
Wow.
Because most people thought they had a different perspective of Detroit. And I would call and say, no, they get all the concerts. They got free concerts. They would say free concerts. Like, yes, they outdoor. You bring a chair. We would do the Southfield. Then they had the Jazz Festival then.
Shout out to Alexander Johnchek and everything he's been doing. But also, we love Kimmy Horn.
Yeah.
Kimmy Horn and everything in Southfield that she's been doing for generations almost.
Exactly.
But years.
So, I think that's what really, drew me in. And then growing up listening to Motown, before my aunt passed away, we would just laugh because, when I was younger, we would, I would go to her apartment because she was my mom's sister, and we would listen to music and we would joke, and I would say, I'm going to move to Detroit so I can go hang out with Rick James.
Okay. All right. And for anybody that is, and I've been privy to a couple of those stories, but Rick James stories and Detroit Motown iteration are very, very colorful to say the least. But we love the king of the punk funk. Rick James. Rest in peace, Rick James.
The Ghetto Life album. That's the one that did it for me. And I was just like, I'm going to Detroit. I'm going to meet Rick James. And then my aunt would say, I'm going to meet Levi Stubbs. We would just joke about it. And then, who knew that I was going to end up
in Detroit,
moving here. And, I probably could do tours at Motown. Again, all my family and friends from down south, they wanted to come to Motown. That was their first stop. So I was going so much I could give my own tour.
And it's interesting because that relationship, when we think of soul music in Memphis, it's like you got Stax and you got Motown. That was really, and then you get the Philly sound a little bit later in the 70s. But those arcs and all of that music and all of that touch that comes from Memphis to come in here, and also even the Franklin family. So like a lot of people, we gonna make Aretha Detroit, but also the roots. We familiar. We familiar with the roots. So us that know, us that definitely know. But we gonna make her Detroit. But most definitely those relationships. So that's from that arc. What about as far as like coming here? You shared that your family all came and that connection. As far as over those years and watching the iterations of Detroit and the culture, did you all stay out in Southfield? Where did you find yourself working? What connections were you making when you did start really building your friendships and setting your roots here in the city?
So probably about 6 months after I got here, I ended up getting a job at Black Entertainment Television.
Wow.
Yeah, doing ad sales, working in the town center. So that was like 10 minutes from where I lived. So through that's how I learned about urban organic, because I was a Detroit rep. So Drake, Pfeiffer, and all those people, they would contact me because I represented Honey Magazine, Heart and Soul, BET Weekend, and they, wanted those connections, or they wanted me to come out, give out magazines at the time. And we would do, giveaways and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of learned about the underground music scene of Detroit.
So first off, shout out to certainly a friend of mine, but also one of the biggest supporters of Detroit is Different. That's Mr. Pfeiffer and Urban Organic. And right now, people maybe know him more so for the DJ Selector series going on at Rosa or Bricks or many other places, welcoming different people to be a DJ. Shout out to just the genius of that idea. But before the DJ Selector series, when you think of Eric Roberson coming to town, rest in peace to Imp Fiddler. A lot of shows with Imp Fiddler. You think of like different iterations of
Floetry. I remember they came. They were like unknown, and Urban Organic brought them here.
Raheem Devon, just so many different acts. Even Roy Ayers, rest in peace, Uncle Roy, that passed not too long ago. This is all in that urban organic experience of creating something around what becomes a whole culture connected to neo soul. So you're in the mix experiencing that as it's coming together. I guess we talk mid 90s. You're watching the beginning of urban organic.
Yes. And then before Kim had his record deal, I found out at an urban organic event because Black Bottom Collective was performing. So it was Black Bottom Collective and Kim on the same show. And again, was invited by Urban Organic. And then that's when we started following Kim. And he did not have, a deal then. So I remember him performing on the rooftop of the Greektown Casino at where Triumph Church is, a Northland campus. I remember we brought some people from Atlanta. They were in town. We paid like $10 for that concert, and then they had like dinners. You know what I mean? It was the best, and it was like everybody was like, "This guy, he's gonna blow up." Everybody was saying that.
So it's also unique that you speak of that. So Black Bottom Collective, my brother in name, and always, like I say, like Khary Turner be doing it. So shout out to Khary Turner and Black Bottom Collective
and Tanisha
and the whole band. Yes, Tanisha, Jalo, Kamau, a great collective of vocalists and an experience when that was there. And then you speak of Kim, so many other things. You said where Triumph is now, that was the Millennium Center.
Yes. I'm thinking the name of it.
These are arcs into an era of Detroit, like late 90s, early 2000s, that if you were there, you remember it. And it's a snapshot in time, but something that led you to have a lot of love for our city.
Yeah. People ask me all the time, what is it like living in Detroit? I say, you get the best of everything. You can try all different cultures. I had never had Middle Eastern food before I moved here. Didn't really have an interest in it, but
now it's like, let me get some hummus. This is bad hummus.
Right. Ethiopian food, all types of food you can get here, and I think, again, like bringing my parents up every summer and letting them just try different things. Sometimes my dad was a little hesitant. He didn't like the Blue Nile. He was just kind of like,
he wasn't trying to try Ethiopian food. And they just were awarded Restaurant of the Year. So shout out to the Blue Nile.
Yes.
And what they do over there. We love that injera.
Yes.
And taste of Ethiopia too.
That tea. That tea.
So these iterations from that perspective, and now you're moving in events and entertainment, which we're definitely going to get to a little bit of that. Yeah. What did you like about that space, and how did you grow from that? And beyond Drake, who are some of the other connections that you make in the city?
So with being the rep for Black Entertainment Television, it was a 3-person office. So we were like a satellite office. So one person handled broadcast, I handled print, and then we had an assistant. So we pretty much, wanted to keep up with what was happening as far as music and entertainment because we had to entertain clients.
I didn't even know BET had like a Detroit office like that, but that makes sense. The one BET thing I remember, rest in peace, Proof. Proof did like during the Super Bowl, he did like a day in Detroit for Rap City BET, and it was one of the most. If anybody that knew Proof, it was like the most Proof experience on television. And I don't even know if you were still there when that happened because that was the Super Bowl. But
no, I think I had left by then. I think I had left that by then. But yeah, I do remember people talking about that. But it was just the all types of connections. I mean, I always say I lived on both sides of the equation because I was on the corporate side because we had to call on GM, Ford, Chrysler, those because we needed, they have the top advertising spend in the world. So you got to have people here on the ground so that you can nurture those relationships so that you can get the money. So with that, we had to always make sure that if it was a concert coming to town, we had the tickets. If there was something, any type of event that involved entertainment, like I don't know if you remember the Tampax Total U tour with Queen Latifah, Sister Souljah. It was like a women's tour that came to Detroit, and Honey and Heart and Soul were one of the sponsors. So we, took clients there, anything that was the culture. We didn't call it that then, but anything that involved around Black culture, we had to make sure we knew about it and that we had access. So that meant that I had to really get to know a lot of the local promoters. And I think for them, it was good for them to be able to tie in with a larger brand too. And I liked that part of it because I was learning as well, but I liked being able to empower somebody who, had a smaller business, but still their event was hot. They were selling out. They just wanted that BET endorsement. So we would send stuff, giveaways, whatever, we would do that.
And you're talking about, I recently had an interview where we were talking with Kiana Montgomery, that's a publicist, about that role in the suite of the 5 Ps and different things, and the difference between public relations, publicity, marketing is all the suite, but advertising and promotion. So it's like you got publicity, you got public relations, you have advertising, and you have promotions. All of this falls into the marketing suite. But a lot of this, what you speak about, is just building that relationship around the publicity and what that means and what that gives value and making that connection. So I would like for you to expand on that, because so many people have events and they're always so focused on like, these corporations got the money, they need to give me the money because I'm doing something very cool, which you're not wrong for that. Mm-hmm. But you also got to see the lens in which where a sponsor sees their dollars and what the package and how they can make that connection with the audience that you're bringing. Sometimes it's just the name and the brand and the association and the connection, but sometimes it's a little bit more. Can you expand on what those value propositions were? That's a real business word, but basically what they was getting out of it and how they, what that offering and that connection was.
So with the automotive category, it was always about butts and seats. That's what we call it. So it had to be, we call them activations events. It had to be something where the people could touch, feel, or experience their product.
Vehicle.
Yeah. So in a vehicle, it could be a ride and drive. Back then we was doing a lot of ride and drives. And ride and drive is where they identify a place where back then you could drive the cars. They would have somebody in the car with you, but they would have a route where you go out on the street. You could really experience the car. I've done it for Corvette, Escalade, lots of the brands were doing it then. Mm-hmm. They would invite people out to do that. And then other things would be where if the car wasn't there, they still had to have a way to be unique, some type of event that was exclusive access, something that money could not buy. Yeah. Because that's, what would kind of draw customers in. And then you still had to be able to put packages together, to be able to say, about how many people are going to see this ad, how many people are going to come, where will your logo be placed? Is it on napkins? Is it on a screen? Are people going to be walking around with T-shirts on? All those different points where people are constantly being engaged with the consumer. And then you got to be able to execute it too. You got to make sure you start on time, make sure you communicate. You got to be able to make sure that if you tell them that your logo is going to be on a flyer, it's not going to look like, we used to call it the flyer circus, where so many logos and there's so little, the sponsors can't see that they're on there because you got so many. So you got to be cognizant of that if they're the top sponsor, it needs to be the largest logo they see. And even with the other sponsors, you can't have them so little where you see some sponsors, but you can't see what those brands are.
Okay. All right. And then this also goes into the arc, which there's still many firms. I mean, I guess I have a Black-owned marketing firm here, but it was an arc in a time, definitely through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, where some stalwart agencies were here in the city. What was your relationship with some of these agencies and the people that really, a lot of Black folks, when we think of the arc of all advertising, because so much of the world of marketing and advertising is seen first from the lens of, y'all don't like this, but I'm honest. I have a degree in marketing, so you study the history of it. Cigarettes. And then after cigarettes and tobacco, we really get into the automotive industry, creating like the life and span of a customer. But what was your relationship with some of those agencies early on when you're doing that work?
Wow. The agency is actually the first step in the sales process for securing advertising on a national level. So back then we had Don Coleman Advertising, which later turned into Global Hue. We had GM Plan Works, which was General Motors. Their name changed a couple of times. Donor. Chrysler was called I think BBD or BBDO. The names have changed a lot, but that is as part of the sales process. You had to go to the agency first, and they had a ton of people that you had to meet with. It would be anywhere from the hierarchy would be like, a assistant media planner, which is a person who actually makes the buy and determines where you're going to buy. So if I'm working for General Motors and I've got a certain amount of dollars and we're trying to market this Chevrolet and it's targeting women, where are we going to advertise? You have to go to that person and say, hey, this is a brand that targets women, or this is a brand that targets who you're looking for. And then you start that process. So it's tons and tons of meetings, tons and tons of process. But the key is you got to have relationships at the ad agencies. And that meant taking them out to lunch, having meetings. We would do in-agency meetings where we provided, lunch for the whole advertising media team that may be on a specific brand. And, because I'm from the South, we always love to cook and bring food in. So I took it to the next level. I brought in a chef, and he did made-to-order omelets. I mean, we laid it out. And it was talk. Yeah, it was the talk of the agency, because keep in mind, it was everybody. This is what we call general market. So this is Sports Illustrated. This is everybody. Nobody had ever done that. And we wanted to do something that kind of made us different. So, that was kind of something we came up with.
Okay. So with that, after BET, where do you go on your work journey with all this experience and this marketing suite and all of that?
So historically, a lot was happening. BET got sold to Viacom.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got to reverse back, because the way I got the job at BET, I was a fan of Heart and Soul. I was reading the magazine, saw the front part of the magazine, which I never read. It's called The Masthead, where it shows everybody who works there. I just reached out and said, y'all hiring. You know what I mean? And they were like, we just had somebody quit. And so I sent a resume, and then ironically, Don Coleman Advertising called the same week and offered me a job. So I had BET on this hand, Don Coleman on his hand, and I was struggling because I had been a fan of Don Coleman, just reading about them in Black Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, what do I pick? So I said, you know what, BET is the larger brand. I'm gonna go with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I ended up with BET. But when I got hired, they flew everybody to New York for an event with Bob Johnson, who was the
owner at the time,
and Deborah Lee. She was the legal person, in charge of legal. And they had an event at a penthouse. I had never been to a penthouse. I'm from the South. I was excited.
Okay.
And so Bob Johnson is there. Nobody's talking to him. Well, I'm just going to walk up to him. Everyone's like, you're not going to talk to him? I was like,
there you go.
He's standing over there. Nobody's talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
I go up to him and I say, hey, I've just got my 3-month probation. I'm running the Detroit office. Do you have any advice for me?
Said, wow, ain't that now, let me say something. I love the boldness of something like that, because conversations like that could go two ways.
Yes, they could.
But at the end of the day, I bet you, I'm gonna put this. I would guess that to end up in a position like Bob Johnson, he started conversations like that many a times, because making the introduction and having the boldness to start that conversation that the next person wouldn't, that's the margin where opportunities come to life. So let's pick up with, you pull them to the side and say, hey, man, you should have had some better cheese at this party. I'm just messing with you.
I told him about that caviar. But anyway, because I don't eat that. But, he stopped and looked at me and told me to have a seat. And he talked to me for the next hour and a half.
Wow.
He told me the whole
story.
How, he really started BET because his goal was just to be able to pay for college for his kids. He had 2 kids. He said cable was not prevalent. It was just a new media.
Yep.
And he went to some workshop about, cable. And he said, okay, I think I'm going to start this network. Well, he didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So he said he asked, and he would not tell me, he said he asked some prominent, that's what he said, African Americans, and they all turned him down. So there was a Caucasian man, his name was John Malone, and he gave him $50,000 to start BET. And he told me he walked around with that check for a while because he had not had that much money in his pocket. So and I asked because at the time, Martin was popular and things like that. And I said, why we don't have like a Martin or something like that? And he said, do you know how much it costs to produce those shows? It's millions and millions of dollars, that you got to have just for production alone. He said, do you know why I showed videos on BET all the time? And I said, not really. He said, because it was cheap and no, MTV was not showing
black videos.
Weren't showing black videos. So he said it was easy. It didn't cost us anything. They send us the video, we play it. And he said we just had all the video shows. That's why we did that. So I asked him what was his initial dream for BET. And he said, I wanted to be like a NBC, CBS. He said, I wanted to be like NBC, CBS, and BET. And I said, wow, and I asked him if he had like some advice for me. Cause I said, this is my first like sales job where, I sold Amway, but this is my first sales job, like on this scale. And he said, okay, I got 3 things for you. He said, be on time, keep your word, and always, make sure you keep up with the numbers, how much things cost, be able to, know your pricing. And I was like, that's it. I'm thinking he gonna give me something else. And he was like, I'll give you one more. He said, follow up. He said, you know what? Most people do not follow up. He said, if you do those things, you're gonna be successful. And in a way, I was kind of disappointed because I thought it would be something more. But it really wasn't. And as time went on, he was so true.
I would say that as basic as those 4 things are, especially as you grow a business and entrepreneurship, all of those things can become so much more difficult because it takes commitment for all 4. Like, it's very basic. It's similar to like, drink more water and exercise. Like, that's simple. But then when you get into the functionality of that, it can become very difficult. And I also want to give, because I'm a nerd in the media, I want to give some other arcs of like that start of BET. BET also, in its start, relies heavily on Howard University's campus. So a lot of the early iterations of BET and Howard run like very concurrent. And for those of us, Barton Cablevision here, shout out to John Barton, rest in peace. But Barton Cable here, and just like getting on to different stations and networks, especially with Black entertainment television, it was hard earlier on. But yeah, these music videos are already produced. And also you spoke of Rick James before, which I think one of the reasons his star, we don't look at it like this, but his star at one point in time was on a larger scale than a Prince and Michael Jackson. I said at one point in time. And he was so known as one of the people that voiced the fact that MTV does not play Black music. And his voicing of that and riling up a lot of different things in corporations, some would say, led to a lot of the lack of access he ended up having to a larger scale in music success. But it also opened up the doors for MTV to say, let's go on. If we're going to start playing Black music, let's start with more of this Michael Jackson. And then comes Purple Rain and Prince. But tying all this stuff together, like it's arcs of business, race, and creativity, and looking at opportunities in the margin, as I call it, another business concept, where you can really get into a success. So after BET, where do you go?
So BET gets sold. I actually joined the company that is owned by Vanguard Media. And Vanguard Media, let me give you a little background on them. Keith Clinkscales and Lynn Burnett, who is from Detroit, went to Shrine of the Little Flower. He always let me do it. But they were discovered by Quincy Jones to run Vibe back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided they were going to start their own company. And Bob Johnson gave them money to start Vanguard Media because he was selling off the network and nobody wanted the print part. So he sold it to them. Well, pretty much gave it to them, but, he helped fund their venture. So they changed the brands from, because it was BET Weekend, it was Emerge, and Heart and Soul. Mm-hmm. So they changed it to Savoy, Honey, and Savoy, Honey, and Heart and Soul. So they kept those brands. So I went and worked for them, still staying in the same office, but it's a different ownership now. It's a ground roots kind of thing. It's like we back at day one.
Yeah.
Doing the same things. We did a lot of festivals. We kind of looked at in the meetings, they would always say to clients, these are the brands when Vibe audience gets older. We still want to be cool, but now we got the money.
Yeah.
So, you can advertise a Audi with us.
Mm-hmm.
You can advertise a Corvette with us. You can advertise, Dolce & Gabbana, like that. But the challenging part of it was that we were still fighting that, African American, we want your money, but we don't want to invest in your community.
Your business, yeah.
Or we don't want to advertise with you, but, because you already buying it. A lot of times people were pretty bold to say, you all are already buying this product, so why do I advertise? I'm like, so you can show some commitment to the community that is making your company wealthy.
This discussion has been a discussion in any form of Black marketing for
hundreds of years.
As long as I can go, even in like what Johnson & Johnson ran into in their early publications of Jet and Ebony and Essence and so much more, because the thought process, and even like before that with the Black newspapers, it is, well, Black folks don't buy this no matter what. They don't even really have a choice. And it's tough because this also kind of reflects in the treatment of the way that us as a Black customer and consumer, we have that relationship with stores.
Yeah.
Hence, that relationship and the movement of what's happening at Target is so empowering right now for me in marketing to look at, me in Blackness to look at, and me also studying history and the boycott to look at. I think that that's so empowering. I personally, this is a Khary take, not even a Detroit is Different take. I don't like the way some people are like moving forward saying they're like the leader of this movement. I don't even think that that's really the movement. I think it's so many sisters that came together and said, we can't believe the nerve of this company that we've really supported for years, neglecting something that we stand and feel connected to.
Yeah.
Whether they stand with it or don't, they should know better. And this boldness and this act and that empowering of taking our dollar back is something that can shift so many things. Like, now I'm gonna get into Khary history lesson even more. Like, so when people even look back at Martin Luther King and the strength of Dr. Martin Luther King, we place so much on him, but that movement really encapsulates and grabs the attention of the country, because that bus boycott in Alabama toppled the economy of Alabama to the point where George Wallace at the time, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation later, so that same bold act of that governor of Alabama at the time is begging the president of the United States, we need money for Alabama to exist, because what started in the bus boycott in Montgomery permeated throughout the rest of the state of Alabama, where Alabama was losing money. Because people just looked at it and said, I ain't hopping on that bus at all. Carpool routes were built, and that's what the strategies of that civil rights movement and the Montgomery bus boycott goes beyond even the footprint of Montgomery, because like people still needed to go to work, people still needed to go to school, people still needed to use the systems of transportation, and we created a whole new economy to never take that bus, and it toppled the economy of Alabama to the point where that is one of the key factors. I'm not going to say it is the key factor that wins even the civil rights bill moving forward, because the other states in the South were looking at like, we don't want to end up like Alabama, where now the services that we're going to, I'm not speaking from this, but I'm speaking from a historical lens, but the white residents were suffering because all the black people said, we ain't taking that bus no more. It toppled the economy of Alabama. That bus boycott and the movement connected to that bus boycott, it permeated and it galvanized other resources from people up here in the North, especially like when we talk about Franklin, like New Bethel was sending so much money down to down south to Montgomery and Birmingham and those places. You know, you build other chains of supply to say, okay, we got to supplement too, because for that effective, almost strategic action to take place, you can't just tell a person, hey, don't do this anymore and not have an alternative.
Right.
And I mean, this grows, and we still have that same capacity as I'm sure many people are finding out. You know, some of the largest Target and most committed Target shoppers have found so many alternatives, where the reality of them walking back into Target at this point in time, even if, you know, I don't know what person they will present as the black leader that says, hey, you can shop at Target again, they're probably still like, nope, I done found enough alternatives, so I'm not coming back, because they lost that retained customer, which in business, and I'm talking marketing again now, is something you never want to lose. But I had to go on that rant as this interview provided the space to do.
And I think people are gonna, you know, that's as you said, that's like a marketing thing. You know, if a customer doesn't feel like you value them, they're not gonna shop there.
And it's sad that we're looked at in marketing to so many businesses, customers that aren't valued. And this even reflects sometimes with our own people, interacting with our own people. So it's not just like oh man, you know, they don't like us because we black. Sometimes as black folks, it's like, they gonna keep coming. You know, they can live in these conditions. I mean, we've seen the conditions of some markets. So shout out to the Detroit People's Food Co-op. That is a sign of self-determination. And the fresh food market that's right here on Linwood, the Fenwood. It's like these spaces and places, when we take our own and care for our own at the level of value and integrity, that needs to be poured into, because it's so often the argument is made, you can give black people anything and they're going to accept it.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
So in this space, and now I'm really jumping forward.
Okay.
These roots to blackness definitely go to, I know you have some ties with some HBCUs. You mentioned it a little bit, but your HBCU experience, where you go?
So ironically, I did not go to a HBCU, but you know, let me tell you the story.
Tell the story.
Again, I'm from Memphis. We never, not that I saw, ever took kids on a HBCU tour. I never went. Never heard of it. The only HBCU I knew of was Lemoyne Owen College. And it was, you know, near my church. And, you know, we never saw a band. You know, we just figured that was, you know, my parents went there. So we didn't like go to a homecoming or anything like that. We never saw a band. It wasn't like something.
You didn't get the experience of the culture that we test. So when you see school days and
drumline,
a different world.
So I did not see that. So I went to the University of Memphis, and then I started dating a guy who went to Grambling. And then some of my friends, you know, they would say, hey, we going to TSU homecoming. I was like, well, I want to go, you know. So then, you know, by this time, I'm like a sophomore, junior in college. So now I'm starting to go, you know, I go to Grambling homecoming, and it's like a whole experience. You know, you looking around like, our homecoming not like this. So I call my parents and say, I want to transfer, even if I could just go to TSU or that. And my dad was like, we don't have the funds for you to, you almost finished.
Yeah.
You know, that means you're going to have to start over. Are these credits going to transfer over? That means it's going to cost us more money. This is out-of-state fees. He said, you just going to have to stick it out, and I was just like, he said, well, you keep on going. You keep going to the homecoming. But, I often thought about that because I knew that there were probably more people like me who never really had that experience.
But want to get the experience.
So fast forward, at the same time, the Southern Heritage Classic is starting, and they're having it there. I think it was like Jackson State, and I can't remember who it was.
So originally, these Southern Heritage Classics were, and I don't even know the mind of the marketer that brings this together, but definitely the roots of like, let's take this Black college football experience and let's take it to different places. I want to say Indianapolis is one of the places where
Circle City
that
Classic
is definitely an anchor, and it brings a culture of a lot of people such as myself that did not. Though I did go to Lewis College of Business, the HBCU in Detroit. Shout out to Lewis, and Ponders family. But people that didn't get what we think of like that Southern Grambling experience to the Midwest.
Yes, yeah. And so I always went. I started going to the Southern Heritage Classic. I had my uncle's friend, one of his best friends, was working like the on-field production. So we would always go. And again, I enjoyed myself, never really thinking about,
one of these connections. And this is when you're in Memphis or still here in Detroit?
This is when I'm a teenager. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a teen, like an early adult, young adult. So when I moved to Detroit, and remember I'm at BET at the time, so this is around like 2000, then that's when the Detroit Football Classic, is happening. Kwame is the mayor, Robert Porcher, Frank Taylor, they're the people who are putting this together.
Big. So it was a moment in time. I went there originally.
Yeah.
First time in Ford Field was for that game. Mayor Kilpatrick, if a lot of people don't know, Florida A&M, a rattler. And I know a lot of rattlers because if you work in media and marketing, it's known as like, you're going to run into some people that went to Florida A&M. Yeah. It's just, that's what happens. So him being from FAMU was really pushing to do that. Frankie Beverly and Mays.
I remember
did the concert.
Yeah.
It was like a Black experience in Ford Field, and Ford Field is newly open at that point in time. And it was like really a hook for Detroiters to buy into even the investment for what becomes Ford Field, because it's like, we don't need to be giving this money to these rich white folks to be doing more rich white folk stuff. And it's like, but we're going to have that Black experience there. So that experience, I want to say I still had a program guide, but whole families were there. Me, my mom, like my brother, almost best friend, Dewan, his mom, his dad. It was one heck of an experience.
Yeah. And for me, I was the connector to help them get the word out on a national level.
Wow. So you were hired.
Well, we had a partner
to like a part of the team of being a media partner of national outreach.
Yes, because we had Savoy, Heart and Soul, and Honey, and they needed to advertise in those brands to get it out on it. Because remember, we don't have social media. It did not exist at this time. And so they reached out to our office. At the time, I had not, I knew who, Kwame Kilpatrick was, but I had not met them. I didn't know Robert Porcher. I knew Frank Taylor because he owned a lot of restaurants at the time. I went back to my management because remember, this is new.
So, because the Vanguard group is relatively new too.
Yes. So I had to go to them and say, hey, this group of men, they want to do this Detroit Football Classic. And one of the managers, Gary Lewis, actually went to Florida A&M too. He was in charge.
Rattler. Didn't I say when you work in media and marketing, you running into some rattlers, the probability is very high.
Right. So immediately when, I said, Kwame Kilpatrick, he was like, that's a rattler. We gonna do it. You know, I mean, it was
So there you go. It's a gold step. It's kind of like if you go talk to black people in law, the chances of running into somebody that's a black attorney and they went to Howard, very high. Very high if they went to HBCU. But okay.
Right. So we ended up being a media partner for the Detroit Football Classic.
Wow.
For those years that it ran. And the last one was in 2004. So during the course of that, Vanguard Media closes. They closed in 2000, I think it was 2004. They closed. And so I was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? So I started getting calls from Sports Illustrated, a lot of big brands, who wanted to hire me to do media sales for them.
Okay.
And so I was at, I'm not going to say where, but I was at a general market media company, and I heard somebody say, that's the black girl, the black girl who sell the black media. Can she sell, general market? I mean, and I heard that. And at first, I was kind of insulted.
Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? That's my niche. It's nothing wrong with that. We the largest consumer group. And at the time, we were getting data every week that was constantly showing and predicting the African American market is going to have $1 trillion in spending power. We were getting this research. That's something that BET would provide us with so that we could go in and see all the categories that we call it over-indexing. And African Americans purchase more goods and services across the board. That's phones, makeup, lingerie, car. I mean, everything.
And let me say this too. Shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson, Black Labor, White Wealth.
Yes.
Our propensity to spend. So that means basically our probability of spend, or old folks will say, money burning a hole in your pocket. As they say, is very high.
Yeah.
So like even during the pandemic, we saw that. The stimulus check and the economies that were created around that, and I'm not necessarily speaking to like people jokingly talk about what was done nefarious ways, but the propensity to spend is very high in our community because it's going to come in and the way we function about money and just the way we look at money collectively. I'm not necessarily saying that that's positive or negative. I think we don't need to see it as negatively as sometimes we put it, but it's a just high propensity to spend. Whereas in other communities, and you all can see it, I mean, the way they're going to guard their dollars. Whereas in our community, you give, it's kind of like one of those things, it's the running joke that Dave Chappelle talks about with reparations, but reparations to the black community, where if it is a cash-based reparations, would be such a stimulus for the American economy. I don't think anything like it would be done.
Right. Yeah. And we were taught, we learned about the spending patterns, and they would tell us that, when the black community, when we would get dollars, it wouldn't stay in our community longer than 15, 30 minutes.
They would say, 30 minutes is even higher. They would say that the propensity of spending is actually, last I checked, I want to say maybe 3.5 minutes. And that's like in an aggregate together. But, who knows what it is, because the other part of this, back into economic systems, now I'm really talking economics, it goes outside of our community because of the resources inside of our community to be sustaining too. Clearly, one of those spaces is going to be a financial institution. We have First Independence Bank here, but black banking institutions, and a lot of black banking institutions are kind of connected to CDFIs. And now I'm really going deep into things, but this is where you need to start paying attention to a lot of stuff happening in government and how things function. So the money leaves our community because the resources to sustain our own community are not abundantly within our community.
Yep, that goes back to having grocery stores and things where we can purchase. If it's not there, then you do have to leave your...
Yeah. It's like it's a no-brainer. It's like to say that so it's like to think to yourself, I'm going to buy everything black and what that would look like. And I'm not saying that it's not possible. It's just not very probable. And that's why the propensity to spend money outside of our community is so high.
Yeah. And I think it's getting better. I don't know if you remember, this was years ago. There was a couple and they had a book out where they spent a whole year and they bought
Nothing but
everything.
black.
Yeah, you remember that? I don't know
I do
what
remember
happened to
that. I
them.
forgot.
Yeah.
I do remember that. I do remember
Mhm.
that.
And they talked about how it was a challenge for some items. They
Mhm.
they they just weren't. But that was years ago. I mean, I think now we've evolved with technology
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say definitely the internet
yeah,
alone.
to be able to level the playing field as far as black companies being able to compete. It's still a long way to go.
Mhm.
I see it a lot all the time, just, in the industry that I'm in the world that I'm in, that there are still,
Oh, it's so many
restrictions.
hurdles and
Mhm.
the disrespect. So you're there and they even disrespecting you, not recognizing that it's going to be these black dollars that's going to sustain this business. And then that's the other arc that I even talk about to the Kiana
Mhm.
interview. It's not just the black dollars, it's the black agency of cool that sets the trends for not just American cool, worldwide coolness. So it's like the black dollar also has impacts on other things, meaning hip hop is one great example, but even without hip hop, we can even go back to jazz. It's like Frank Sinatra's cool because he sings jazz and he knows all these jazz players. That sets the standard of cool for what white America starts thinking is cool. And that's back in the day example for you, but we can use so many other iterations and examples
Mhm.
to this day.
Yeah.
Like the arc of how our dollar moves and what we invest in sets trends that have global reverberations that come back and create whole markets.
Right. Yeah.
Like here's one classic one that we don't think about and people tie it to hip hop, but we can or whatever, but sneaker culture.
Uh-huh.
Sneaker culture and black culture create what sneaker culture is. And StockX now, not the rate of it, but just the commercials it runs, the access it is, and what it is, and people wanting sneakers, that's connected to black culture. If black folks wasn't sitting around saying, hey, check these kicks out, or I'm collecting kicks, or look these, that's not connected.
Right.
Nobody's if we start collecting tennis rackets the same way, give it about 30 years and that'll be one market too.
Yeah. We set the trends. I still remember, I was just telling some younger people, I still remember the first major endorsement deal for liquor. It was when Jay-Z got that first liquor endorsement. I don't know if that was Ace of Spades or it was something.
Belvedere.
Yeah, Belvedere.
Mm-hmm.
We were, over the moon because we were like, finally, somebody sees it. But then when we tried to go out and do more of those deals, we were still getting the pushback. Now it's so normal now, but there was a time when it was not.
And you're talking about something I'm very well aware of, and so much that has been done. Lazar Favors and Taste of Black Spirits, and moving in that shift. But and we speak about it, and I'm sure we're going to talk more extensively about it with Taste of Black Spirits for this year. But even the brand deal for it shocked me. And right now, we're looking at the trial of everything, and Lord knows anything that was harmed by Sean Combs, prayers up. But that deal for Ciroc and Diageo, the brand that owns Ciroc. Ciroc was a liquor company that basically within the first year of connecting to the brand of Sean Combs, their market share, he said, went up 3,000 times. So that's basically you all know, multiplication and to the seventh power or something, but it went up almost to the fifth power of basically a brand that's a basic vodka brand, but with this stamp, because it's back to setting trends in what we do. So it's more than just even the black dollar itself. It's the way that the black dollar can reverberate for any place.
And it's the association with the right brand too. Like that the right collaboration is important too. And I think, I studied that while it was happening, and I saw how Sean had that Ciroc sitting on that table everywhere he went. You know what I mean? Whatever talk show, he would be like, and don't forget this, don't forget this Ciroc. He was really pushing it. After a while, he didn't even have to do that anymore because people knew when you said Ciroc, you knew it was him. You
Yeah.
know.
And we didn't even know. I mean, the lawsuit he won, but I thought he was the owner of it. But,
No. Well, we knew in the marketing.
yeah, I was going to say in your world, you probably knew.
Yeah,
and
we
this
knew.
is where we even go with so many other things, but hence that power of that black dollar and spending. So the agency is definitely needed. So it's interesting that was raised.
Yeah.
So in that space, even working in, I guess you say the general sales, but
the general market.
still,
We call it
general market still kind of needs to connect. And that's what I do. I love that black niche too. You know, hence
because it's easy to sell. When I always say I am the consumer,
you got that right.
I got to share this because it's like I'm not gonna say who the company was, but I was pitching paint. Just paint. You paint your house, you paint your rooms. I was told black people didn't buy paint.
Wow.
And I was like, I just, because we bought a fixer-upper when I was married. We painted every wall ourselves. We did it ourselves. And the person said, oh, no, Cheryl, not you. We not talking about consumers like you. But I am the consumer.
You are the consumer. And I would think that the way that, hey, as I say, because it's two things in marketing, really, here go the secrets. Women are really the consumers that we leaning into. Not saying that men aren't going to buy, but it's harder to sell to men. But women, I've seen women buy the right, and my friend, my little cousin, and all the visual artists, but my cousin's a visual artist. And I tell him, I'm like, look, let me tell you something. A woman will buy your art piece and paint and redesign her whole space where that piece is going to sit. So if you can help her along the way, knowing the colors that you use, saying the paints that go, knowing the throw pillows and everything, they want an experience to connect. Yes. That's one hell of a committed consumer.
Yeah. And the women, they're the major influencer in a purchase decision. Most marketers, when, back in the day, they were all trying to reach, black women because they knew they were going to be an influence in if they were buying a car, a house, anything. They had the influence for that.
So in this space now, we talk a little bit around it.
Okay.
But let's just go there because we're here now.
Okay.
You're doing the classic again.
Yeah.
And it's coming back Labor Day.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, okay, this is so big. And I'm thinking, even when I was on the phone with you, I was like, so are you looking for sponsorship? You looking for ticket scales? You like, we need to get the word out.
Yes.
And this is a space where people can definitely get the word out. And shout out to everybody that supports Detroit is Different. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
So in this same space, you doing the classic now. Not ex HBCU players, and you usually think of ventures like this is definitely going to be a lot of men at the table.
Yeah.
How do you end up in this space of leadership here?
So around like 2008, people were always
asking about when's it coming back?
Yeah, everybody would sit around, be at parties like, when's the classic coming back? And I'll be like, yeah, we need to bring it back. You know what I mean? Everybody's talking about years are going by. 10 years goes by. 12 years goes by. And at the time, I was producing an event during the North American International Auto Show, the first woman to do one. It was called the Multicultural Media Luncheon.
Congratulations.
Did it for 12 years. It was kind of like TED Talks meets the Academy Awards, where we honor people of color for their work in the auto industry.
Okay.
So I was doing that, and I had an attorney because we were trademarking that, and he was a young attorney. I think he probably was just out of law school, and he asked me, and we talk about this to this day. I don't know what made him ask me if I could do anything. What would it be? He asked me that, and I said, you know what? I would love to bring that Detroit Football Classic back.
Wow.
Now, he is not African American, and he said, "What's a HBCU Classic?"
Hilarious.
And it just kind of threw me back. I was like,
you ain't seen a different world?
Yeah,
School days?
He had not seen any. And so I educated him on that. And we joked about it. And he said, you should work on that. If that's something that you really want to do, you should work on it. Put the time in and work on it. He was that person to encourage me. So I left there and I was just like, I don't know. Can I really do this? So thought about it for like maybe 6 months. And then I was talking to one of my dad's church members and her brother again, who was my uncle's best friend.
That worked in production in the Indiana Classic.
In the Southern Heritage Classic.
Yeah, Southern. Well, it's in Indiana, but Southern Heritage.
No, it's in Memphis.
Okay, that's in Memphis.
Yeah, Southern Heritage Classic means Circle City Classic is in Indianapolis.
Ah, okay.
So my uncle's best friend worked there. So I reached out to him and told him what I wanted to do. I said, but I think it's important before I make this decision, I need to come like train. I need to kind of see
what it is,
what's involved in it. And for 4 years, every year, I went down there, paid my own way, and worked, with them, just seeing
the production.
Yeah, seeing the production, just making sure. So when we got to year 4, because that was like 2016, I was talking to the owner, Fred Jones, and he said, what you think? I said, wow. Ooh, it's gonna be a lot. You know what I mean? He said, well, if you feel, I think you're ready. I think, I think you can do it. He said, you just, you got to prepare yourself mentally because it's gonna be a lot, and you're a woman. Yeah. And at the time, I think I'm one of 2 women who own Classic. The other one is an Orange Bowl Classic. She's a female, but everybody else is men. And so, I went through the process of securing the trademark because the ownership, I learned that from watching Jay-Z and Puffy and, all these other people because I was in that world. And in those meetings, I would often hear, we don't just want to be an endorsement deal. We want ownership. Yeah. I would hear that over, and so that stuck with me. And I said, well, I just can't produce it. I got to own it.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that I went through all the proper channels to secure the trademark. And so that took a while. And then around like 2018, everything was pretty much done. So it was like a 2-year process. And then we started working on 2020 for the football classic. So we had TSU and Southern.
Everything was ready. And then
everything was ready.
Then the next thing you know,
the pandemic hit.
Yep.
And it was like devastating. Nobody was prepared for that.
No.
Nobody was prepared for that. And it really, hurt us on a lot of different levels because we had, the
momentum and the people in play. And then sometimes in leadership, like you build momentum, you like keeping the band together can be so tough. And also if we, it's so close, like 5 years ago, but people like, is it open back up? Is it not open back up? Is the world gonna stop altogether? Should I prepare for The Walking Dead? Like, it was a lot in limbo of what was happening at the time.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. Just going through that whole process and then, having to, kind of regroup.
Yeah.
And figure out, are we going to bring this back? We thought about it in 2023, but then, I talked to, my colleagues in the healthcare industry and they were like, no.
Not yet.
Don't do it. We'll let you know, but 23 and 3, no. So then that's why we said we would, focus on 2025. And so, it's been, it's hard work. It's different because you're a female in a male-dominated industry.
Got that right.
I often, I can joke about it now, but I can remember talking to, it was a manager at a brand, and I was talking to him about the classic, and he said, so what's your role? Are you like in charge of the cheerleaders or majorette?
Hilarious.
I was like, sir, I own this. But it was just funny because he just
couldn't see it.
He couldn't see it. I can laugh about that now. I was like, but it's been, it's a challenge on every level, just trying to get sponsorships. I think one of the things that I like that you asked me was, what was my goal? Because no one really ever asked me the why. And I'm big on explaining to people why I make the decisions that I make. And to me, it was because our culture, our community needs it. I watched the NFL draft. I studied it. I was down there and I was like, this would be great if this could be the same energy that we could have for the Detroit Football Classic. So I often tell people now that for me, the Detroit Football Classic is a different world meets the NFL draft.
I like it. So when is it? I know it's Labor Day. Where is it going to be at? Where do people get
Okay.
tickets?
So it is August 29th and 30th. That's Friday and Saturday. The game is Saturday, August 30th, 1 p.m. at Ford Field, Kentucky State and Central State. You can get those tickets at Ticketmaster.com. And if you click on, so once you go to Ticketmaster.com and you select Detroit Football Classic, you'll see a button that says Unlock. You can click that, type in the word Enjoy, ENJOY, for Enjoy Motor City. We'll give a shout out to Christopher Kyle because that's a marketing partner. We'll talk about that. And you can get a ticket for as low as $21. I don't know how many we got left.
There you go.
But, we wanted to make sure it was affordable. Before we did that special, I had a section called a We In There section. It was like $30 tickets because, sometimes, because I've gone to classics and there are people that's just going to walk all day. They just want a ticket to get in so they can just walk that stadium. If they trying to find somebody, trying to choose up, they're going to walk.
They want to get some food. They want the energy to feel. They're not necessarily watching the game. They may stop for a second when the band out there.
Yes.
I mean, they did that they're doing that at Super Bowls now. Even in the NFL, this is also part of Black culture now. Like the Raiders Stadium has the club in it and all of that. This is
because we influenced that. So we had a section called We In There for $30. You can get a ticket. It's in the end zone, if you just want to be.
Yeah, it's like and that's probably gonna be a cool ass section to be in. Now that I think about it, I mean, it's kind of like the lawn at Shane Park. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So, so you can get tickets at Ticketmaster.com, or you can go to Ford Field box office. That's Gate G, 1600 St. Antone. They're open Monday through Friday, and then on Friday, August 29th, we'll be doing tailgating in Paradise Valley Harmony Park area. That's 1468 Randolph. If you're familiar with Fixins or La Casa, the cigar bar, it's in that area. We picked that area, or I picked that area, for two reasons. Number one, because of the historical nature of it. Paradise Valley was the only place that African Americans could own businesses from the 1920s, 30s to the 1960s. And when I moved here, I heard about it. And I remember going there like 1999, 2000. It was nothing over there.
Yeah.
It looked completely abandoned. So to see it now, where there are businesses, it's thriving, there's a marker there. I felt like that was the place. And Total Access Events is a company that is going to be, executing that tailgating and fan experience for the Detroit Football Classic. African American owned. They've done tons of things for the city. Tigers opening day. They're actually running African World Festival this year. It's a family run business and they do exceptional work. So we picked it for that specific reason. And then secondly, because it's 5 minutes from Ford Field. So you can park one time, you can go to the fan experience Friday and Saturday, tailgate Friday and Saturday, and then you can walk to Ford Field. So, logistics is another thing that I studied in college. And, when you're doing events, you want to make sure it is turnkey, it's effortless. You don't want people to have to be, okay, now I got to park here, now I got to go park my car. You want to make sure everything is like seamless. Like I park one time, I can walk here, and then when it's time for the game, I can walk there. So we have tailgating spots. You can go to DetroitFootballClassic.com, click on the tailgating and vendors tab, and then scroll down, and you'll see where you can fill out a form. We tried to make everything affordable, vendor tables, because we want to be able to have small businesses be able to, sell their products as well. So for tickets, game day tickets, you can go to DetroitFootballClassic.com. And then, for game day tickets, you can go to Ticketmaster.com, or you can go to Ford Field office. DetroitFootballClassic.com. You can get tailgating, vendors, and then there's a game day tab there in case you forget where you need to go.
Hilarious.
You can just say, okay, let me just see where the tickets are. We're going to direct you there anyway. So those are the places. If you have 15 or more people in your group, you can get a group rate. And again, you can go to DetroitFootballClassic.com, select the game day tickets, and you'll see a section that says, would you like to purchase some group tickets? fill it out. We'll get you an invoice. You can pay it.
Okay. Definitely. I like that. I like that feel.
Yes.
Definitely like that feel. So with this, and wanting to connect even in other forms of media and everything as we get closer to a close. And thank you so much for sharing your story in spaces that I had no idea you would unlock so much in my mind of media and events. And I get to talk history and so much more. But y'all see the stuff that I love this stuff. I nerd out on a lot of this stuff. So with this, the success is already from the motion of the ideation, meaning coming up with the idea, and then moving forward and building the team, and then also pivoting and building the team. But right now, I definitely want to applaud the success of doing something like this as a woman and having that vision and seeing that dream. What has been the response of like the family and friends watching you move this path forward?
I think initially it was kind of disbelief. Not because they didn't think I could do it. I know my parents knew I could do it, but my mother was like, this is a space where it's male dominated. I'm used to being a trailblazer and being in places that people have not been. But it's just sports is different. It's a lot of money can be made in sports, and from an ownership perspective, African Americans are just now starting to participate in that owner level. We've always been, the talent. We've been the people who make these brands successful as they are. But in the ownership realm, we're just starting to, become a more active participant in that. So, that part for my family was their concern, just, being, able to be resilient in that. And I'll tell you a funny story, another one. So again, I'm from Memphis. My great aunt, my great grandmothers, they were all part of NAACP. When Ben Hooks, if you know who he was the head of the NAACP, and at the time I was working at a transportation company in Memphis. I had interned there, and they had no African Americans in customer service because they were telling people you had to have a college degree.
Yeah.
So I applied. I was rejected. And then they said, oh, you can become a manager if you go out on a truck with a truck driver because you got to understand the trucking industry. So I'm telling my grandma, I was like, is this legal? And my dad was like, this is not legal. And I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And my grandma was like, this is not safe. So they reached out to Ben Hooks and NAACP. And, they talked to me and they, briefed me on how to build this residency wall. Don't be out here getting upset. You can't react. You gotta check your emotions. You gotta think about the people that's coming behind you. Whatever decisions you make, good or bad, it's gonna affect people that's coming behind you. After you do this, they'll probably let more people be in customer service. You're that person. You gotta prepare yourself mentally to do that. And so I rode in a truck with a stranger from Memphis to New York. We did not stop in any hotels. I had to wash up in a McDonald's. It was humiliating. But when I got to New York, I called that company back and was like, I'm not going back on a truck. You need to send me a plane ticket. I've done, my requirements. I've completed the task. But what they didn't count on was the relationships I built out in that field with those drivers. Because I really understood the importance of being able to schedule them where they got enough time to unload. It was just those things that you really don't think about. So when I became a manager, I shot to the top because I already had relationships with the drivers. They already knew me. So I think it wasn't meant for that, but
it ended up becoming a bonus.
It ended up becoming that. And then after that, years later, I used to go back there. Now I see all these people of color, as customer service managers. Some of them know that I was the one that opened the door. Others of them didn't know. But for me to walk through that company and see, these young African Americans, and they'll say, that's such and such. She's the manager for the New England region, or this person is Helen Scott Paper, or, to to know that I did that, even though it wasn't pleasant. It was humiliating. But I thought about, what my, great aunt and my grandmother, they were like, you're going to open the door, and sometimes people going to open it, walk in and never look back.
Right.
You can't get mad about that. You've done your job. You just go on to the next thing. So it's kind of like that for this too.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're
So
welcome.
now some classic Detroit is different questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
Your very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Now, is this shared vehicle with my sister or my car?
It's whatever, however you answer the question.
Because I shared a car. It was terrible. Okay.
So what was your first car?
My first car was the Mazda MX-6, 1990. It was black. I love that car. And I bought it, with my own money. I mean, my dad co-signed for me, but, he was like, if you miss a payment, I ain't getting it.
Hilarious.
So that was my first car, and I was just like, I really felt like an adult. You know what I mean?
That's something.
I felt, because I had shared a Chevette with my sister, and sharing a car, man, you got to get up at 6 o'clock so you can take the car so she won't take it and be gone all day.
Oh, man. Oh, man, that don't sound like a lot of sharing.
No.
I love to hear the sister side of this story.
Yeah, we had to call.
The sister side. It's like, I thought I was going to be able to.
Yeah, she was gone all the time.
All right. Okay. So next question. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Blow the Whistle.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. The Jump Off, Queen Bee.
Okay. All right. Getting the party going and keeping it going.
I'm keeping it going.
And the last question. This is for the non-Detroiters.
Okay.
And this is a strange one.
Okay.
Spaceship comes down. Floats right in front of your house.
Okay.
E.T. comes out and says, take me to the most Detroit place you taking me. Where you taking E.T.?
Wow. Man. It's a couple of, let me see. What's the best place? I would say Baker's Keyboard Lounge.
Okay.
You know why?
Why?
Because I like that old school vibe, the spirits of all the people who came through there. The good food.
Okay.
And I like the keyboard bar and the picture. You could it's like a museum when you go in there.
Yeah.
You got Miles Davis on the wall. You got Charlie Parker.
Okay.
I would take him there.
And I'm sure E.T. would end up with a picture on the wall too. It'd be like, see, E.T. was even here. It's like, damn, E.T. was here?
E.T. was here for
Exactly. I love it. Thank you so much, and best with the classic. So much. I see some combinations, though. A lot going on Labor Day weekend, but Detroit is different. Gonna definitely show some love.
Thank you, Khary, for having me on this show. It is an honor. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
All right. Peace.